Welcome into the Source to Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network, presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, as always, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by the one and only Shawn Smith of Frederick Douglass basketball. I'm still not used to that. It's still weird to say. But Shawn, how the heck are you, buddy?
Doing much better until I opened this drink, and now I'm wearing it. So that was right as you started the show.
I was wondering what the eye, you glared down at yourself, like you peed yourself or something. But I guess spilling a drink is like the next best thing that could happen other than just peeing yourself. So I'm glad you didn't do that.
I'm channeling my inner John Calipari with a Dunkin' iced coffee cake batter donut. I don't know what this is, but somebody gave it to me, and I was like, I didn't realize it was coffee at this hour, but here we go.
We're going to get off the rails. It's going to be a fun one. We're very excited. 88-54 win over Brown on New Year's Eve. We kind of knew what to expect with that one. A 10-day break following whatever that was up in New York City. A little lethargic start, but then kind of they became who we thought they were to close out the game. So we're not going to dig a ton into that. If you have any, dying requests to talk about Brown, I'd love to hear them. Ivy League Iverson held him mostly in check, although 17 points, 16 points, 7 and 12 shooting, still impressive for him. Forced a ton of turnovers, righted some of the wrongs that they had throughout the season early on. That's going to be kind of a bigger picture theme of today's show. It's going to be more of a, closing the book on the non-conference schedule where Kentucky goes 11-2, two unbelievable top 10 victories, both away from home, beating Duke in the Champions Classic, then traveling all the way out to Seattle to beat another top 10 Gonzaga team. You get your slip up in the first true road game against Clemson, and then, as we said, whatever in the world that 20-point beatdown was in New York City. You live and you learn. We learned a lot about this team. Some question marks to kind of grow from, some early season surprises. So that's how we're going to spend the most of the show. I guess let's just do a 5-minute recap of just what happened in the Brown game. Shawn, what did you like? What did you not like? What were just kind of some of the smaller picture takeaways you had from that game before we move on?
I mean, you and I had been talking about how this team hadn't turned people over, right? Like in Kentucky didn't turn it over, but Brown turned it over a ton. The one thing I wanted to key in on, though, there's been a lot of talk about, is this a good 3-point shooting team? Is it not a good 3-point shooting team? Or did they just hit a funk in December that they're going to eventually come out of? They got to that double-digit mark of made threes, Jack, and I guess the one positive for me is when you look across, out of 10 made threes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys made a three. So it was good balance in that department. It didn't all come from one guy. It wasn't all from Kobe Bryant. It wasn't all from Jackson Robinson. So maybe just the balance of those made threes is where I kind of keyed in and looked at that I think that's something to value, and I think that's important going into league play. That area of the floor and having success can't all come from one guy. It can't just be one guy making long-distance shots. It's got to be as a team, and I thought Kentucky did that, even though they were 35, 36%, which isn't horrible. We've seen this team shoot 40% or better, and we know that they're capable of that. But, hey, 11-2 going into conference play, that's what I had in my preseason predictions. Now, the wins weren't the same, but 11-2 entering this league, it puts you in a good position because it's better than going in 7-6 or something like that, because we know how tough this league is going to be in the coming weeks.
For the third time in 14 games, Kentucky will take on a top 10 opponent. Number 6, Florida, come into town. A stupid 11 a.m. start. I don't love it. I know they're trying to do the full 24-hour thing. I just not a fan of it, to be totally honest. For 12 hours, whatever it is, it's late, obviously. And then as things stand today, 6 more, including Florida, top 10 matchups in the regular season schedule, 11 ranked matchups from January to March, and then 14 of the 18 league matchups are currently considered quad 1. So it was a great measuring stick, in my opinion. We get to see what they, I know Gonzaga's had its ups and downs, and Duke definitely finding its groove after some early season slip ups. Clearly one of the best teams in college basketball. Learned a lot about what this team's true flaws were, especially with physicality, some offensive rebound issues, not forcing turnovers as we talked about, and then just trying to figure out what in the world to do with this 3-point shooting. As you said, is it a good 3-point shooting team? Can they only make shots if they take 30 plus? What happens if they live in that kind of 20 to 25 attempt range? It's kind of just a really weird. Haven't learned yet what this team's identity is from three. We know they want to take them, but haven't gotten to the numbers that they were looking for, and also the volume, just the efficiency hasn't been what they wanted. As things stand right now, number 40 nationally in 3-point makes per game at 9.8. I kind of did a New Year's resolution kind of deal on KSR, like what 5 things I want to see going into 2025 with this team, and the first thing I listed was live in that 10 plus 3-point makes per game range. Really, they're not that far off from kind of the elite of the elite in college basketball. I looked up, nationally what the, best of the best looks like right now. The difference between number 1 and number 40 nationally is from where they are right now versus number 1 team in college basketball is 3.4 makes a game. And if you consider kind of where Pope has been wanting to push and get to that 30 to 35 range, haven't been even close to that. And a lot, I liked where they kind of live in that 28 attempts against Brown and made 10 of them. They kind of hit both of those numbers I was personally liking. But you're also only one additional make a game away from being top 15 nationally, number 1 in the SEC. And I think that's more of what Pope is looking for. I think if Kentucky can live in that 10 make per game, 10.8 makes per game, I think that kind of helps solve a lot of the other issues and opens things up, as driving lanes, getting it inside. I think the it's not what could be a well-oiled machine right now is sputtering a little bit, and I think just that extra breathing room that this team can have with a couple more makes, a couple more shots a game, I think is going to be the difference when they're going to need them against SEC competition.
Yeah, I think 10 makes is a really good goal and a really good number to get to. And if they get to that number, Jack, I think that they're going to have a lot of success in league play. That seems like a healthy number of made threes a game, right? Like, and they got there, yesterday, and they're going to have to get there, I think, often in league play. Like, you're going to have to be able to make shots from the perimeter. We know that this team, when they do that, it kind of fuels the really good nights that they had, especially early in the season. So I think that's a good number to get to if they can consistently get 10, 11 made threes a game. Then I like what they're going to be able to do in their output offensively. And I mean, look at this, like your SEC opener is a top 10 matchup. That is kind of foreshadowing what's going to come throughout the league. It's just matchup after matchup after matchup is going to test your will. It's going to test your discipline. It's going to test, what you're made of. And you have success on a Saturday and you turn around and you got to match it on Tuesday against another quality opponent. So you're getting off to a start against an unbeaten team in league play coming into your building. It's a heck of a way to get fired up to start, league play.
I kind of like it, Sean. I kind of my biggest gripe, the one thing, if you were to say, hey, you have one resolution for this team to actually utilize and take advantage of and use the rest of the way, it's the slow starts. It's the sluggish, never feeling like the game is in doubt. Obviously, Ohio State was an outlier, and even Gonzaga, Duke, some of the games that they ended up coming back from, they just lived in that territory of like, we'll be fine, we'll figure it out. We're just collecting data. Halftime adjustments are going to come, and we're going to outcoach the competition. We're going to, Mark Pope's going to give us the perfect blueprint for how to beat the competition in the second half, and we'll be totally fine. That got them finally kind of beat the way they deserved coming in with that mindset. But when Pope talked about it today, talking to the media, said, you can't push all your chips in on, number 6 team coming to Rupp Arena on Saturday. Oh, here we go. A start of SEC play. You're getting hype. You're getting self built up. You can't push all of your, kind of mental fatigue, all of your, all of your physical and mental energy into this matchup, because you have miss at on the road at Mississippi State, on the road at Georgia. You have just quad one after quad one after quad one, so you really have to kind of live in that space of always being ready. Don't have to get ready if you stay ready, if you will. So I kind of like that we're now past the point of the ups and the downs and the roller coasters of Colgate's and then Duke and then Ohio State and Brown and, the ups and downs. You kind of just have to live in that same mental space. And I'm hoping that that's where some of those, all right, yeah, we got it. We're good with the non-conference. Like we're ready to move on. I'm hoping that was kind of where we got a lot of the mental lagging, the mental kind of lapses that we saw early on in the slow, sluggish starts. And I'm hoping that is going to be the big picture takeaway that we see, especially come out of the gate. It's going to be a weird 11 a.m. start against Florida, but I'm hoping that it's going to be, just the start of SEC play is going to be that, all right, this point forward, it's put up or shut up time. January to March, it's do or die banner season.
It is. And like I said, the league is going to test your will every single game. So when I'm looking at the net rankings right now, and I start at number 39, you got Ole Miss, an 11-2 team. You got Texas, 35, 11-2. Vandy, 34, 12-1. Georgia, 27, 12-1. Texas A&M, 20, 11-2. Mississippi State, 19, 12-1. Kentucky, 18, 11-2. And you start climbing toward the top 10. Number 9, Alabama, 11-2. Florida, number 4, 13-0. Tennessee, number 2, 13-0. Auburn, number 1, 12-1. Think about that. That's a lot of teams that have double-digit wins that are right there with you as an 11-2 team. You're going to see that night in and night out in this league. And you, like you said, we're done with the Colgates. We're done with the Browns. We're done with those games where you're sandwiched between a really high moment and coming in and knowing than someone else. You consistent. And I think that New Year's resolution for this team is consistent in all aspects of the game, because consistent teams are going to be the teams that are standing at the end of this thing in the SEC.
Yeah, it's a weird year because the record could be pretty ugly in league play. And we used the Big 12 last year as an example where, BYU goes 10-2 in league play last year. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Where if you look on just kind of a every year in out kind of basis, 10-8 in league play would kind of stink. So it's kind of weird how you do just kind of have to move the goalposts ever so slightly with this season, this year in particular, because Stephen gave us a stat to start the show. I think UConn went 9-9 in that historic 2011 Big East season, and won it all. So it was one of those that was seen as a historic year, and they broke 500. It could be something very similar this year where it's going to be a Tuesday night in Oxford. It's going to be a Tuesday, late night, 8:30, 9 o'clock tip-off. You're going to get some of these weird matchups that you just kind of have to take the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs, lefts and rights that come with this season, because it's historic. I think it's going to be a little unfair to Mark Pope by the end of the year, where even if they do lose 6 games, 7 games in SEC play, there's a chance that's still 2-seed territory, something like that. And we're going to go through, I think Bart Torvik does a great job. You can kind of pick game by game, and it spits out what the projected seed line is. And you can get kind of, loose with it and even still finish with the top 3, top 4, top 5 seeds. So we'll kind of run through a loose schedule, but it is really weird and kind of tough for Pope to go into this gauntlet the first year that he's at Kentucky and know that we have to kind of move the goalposts as a program, because the SEC is just something that we've never seen before at any level in any conference in college basketball.
I think it's going to be very difficult for every single team in this league and every single coach and fan base to measure success, because what does it look like in this league this year? Because you're going to have those weeks where you're going to go 1-1. You're going, if you have weeks where you go 2-0, holy cow, you might as well, you better value
those. Are going to be gold.
There's not going to be many. And I think it's going to be hard to measure success, not just individually for your program, but overall as a league. I think it's going to be hard. And that's where I think getting into March, the SEC tournament, going into Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament, Jack, it's how do we evaluate these teams over the next 2 to 3 months, over January, February, into early March. So about what? 10 weeks, 11 weeks left in the regular season for Selection Sunday. How do we evaluate the SEC? We had a really good evaluation in the non-conference. When they start beating up on each other, some of the value, I think, nationally is going to lose itself, and some of these teams are going to get lost in the shuffle, but are going to be really good teams and dangerous when they get in the NCAA tournament. So to me, it's about survive league play, and be ready to rock and roll when you get into that NCAA tournament. But look, number 6 Florida, number 10 Kentucky right out of the gates, 11 a.m. Not the ideal tip-off time, no. But it's a top 10 matchup to start SEC play. That's a pretty big deal, and that should have you fired up. And that's where I want to see this team be able to string together consistent performances on the defensive end, on the offensive end, on the glass. Are you forcing turnovers? Are you valuing possessions? How do you value league play right now? Because it's going to be an absolute war every single night you take the floor. You can't have nights off. If you have nights off, you'll have 2 or 3 game losing streaks in the league, and that's where you're starting to get in trouble. Losing streaks can't stack up.
So we've obsessed over quad 1 wins on this show for years. Like, that's been our bread and butter. Like, this is our season. Like, this is where we live. This is this is our Super Bowl, this point forward. Does that change this year, Shawn? Because every game is a quad 1, and now you kind of have to use those kind of gold nuggets as 2-0 weeks. Like, will we at the end of this year go back and say we had 7 2-0 weeks, and that was the difference between a 1 seed and a 2 seed? Like, is that how we're going to view what's to come in SEC play, rather than the way it's been before, where you had plenty of them, but not all of them being quad 1 the way we're going to get this year?
Yeah, you've heard me for years now talk quad 1. Well, this year it's going to be pockets of 2-0. I'm going to put 1 week in, and it's the beginning on Tuesday to Saturday games, not the Saturday to Saturday. It's the Tuesday to Saturday. What are you in the week? Did you go 2-0? Did you go 1-1? Did you go 0-2? I'm telling you, you're going to be able to look at this league, and the teams that have the weeks of 2-0 are going to be at the top of it. The teams that are finding a way to split and go 1-1 with maybe a couple of 2-0s are going to be the teams that I consider to be dangerous teams that make it to the NCAA tournament, that get into the 10-11 win range in this league. Jack, I'm telling you, Tennessee, Florida, these teams are right there. They're going to look up and have 4 or 5 league losses by the time the SEC tournament starts. It's going to devour you as a program, not in and not out in this league. So quad 1 wins to me don't mean as much this year, because if you're winning, you're probably winning a quad 1 game. So your resume is going to take care of itself as long as you're winning. It's just you can't have weeks where you go empty. Empty weeks will crush you this season in this league. You can't go 0-2. 0-2 weeks will find you probably sitting there wondering what in the world you're doing, and kind of looking up from like a 10th, 11th, 12th place finish in this league. You can't go 0-2. No 0-2 weeks should be the goal. And I know that sounds crazy for Kentucky basketball. Don't go 0-2 in any given week. And I think it's a heck of a run in SEC play.
If a kill is 3 stops, what is a stretch of 2 consecutive wins within a week called? Like, what is you called it a pocket? Is that what we're going to go with?
I'm just
like, what is going to be our
survival?
Like, this is what we're going to call, like, okay, we're going to get to a Saturday evening and we're going to go, there was our pocket win. Like, what is going to be the name
I guess
of a 2-0
I guess you
week?
could break it up. I guess the better word would be break it into little pods, right? Like, here's your pod of 2 games. I look at it kind of as just it's basically a 2-game series, right? Like, you're trying to split, and hopefully you win the rubber match more often than not. Like, when you get that 3rd game, like, it's just, to me, it's more so about avoiding 2-game losing streaks. Don't lose 2 in a row at any point in this league, and I think you're going to be in good shape, because you're going to win. You're going to have some stretches. I don't see this being a team that's going to win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1. I think they're going to be able to to win back-to-backs at times. If there's a team in this league that's able to win 4 or 5 in a row, Jack, then that's probably going to be where some separation is going to come into play. But I don't know. Maybe we can come up with a term. Maybe our listeners can come up with a term for how we should kind of break this down. But it's real. I mean, look, there it is. Like, where do you find success and how do you consistently find it? So Vandy would have been one to look at in the preseason, but they've had such a good run in the non-conference that they're still kind of on that brink of, who is Vandy? Like, what are they playing for in a sense? But you start out with number 6, then you go to a team in Georgia it's only lost a game, and then you go top 25 matchup, and then you got number 5 Alabama with that Vandy team, and then number 1 on the road. So then you got an emotional game with Arkansas. Like, it's going to be difficult, but I'm telling you, avoid 2-game losing streaks, build in a couple of 2-game win streaks, and I think you're going to look up and be in that 10 to 11 win SEC range. Listen, 11-7 this year in the league, to me, is in the upper half of your really good.
That was my next question for you. So if you go 9-9, if you on paper do exactly what we're talking about, where you don't have any 2-loss weeks and you split at minimum for just even numbers, we can go win-loss the entire way. You got a 9-9 finish. What is the threshold point? What is the 10? Is it double digit SEC wins means that you've done your job in for this year in particular, adjusting for what the talent level is. If Mark Pope went 10-8 in that version of the Big 12 with this talent, with a stronger version of the conference, is 10-8 the bare minimum of what we should demand as a fan base? Like, is that kind of if you go 9-9, is it a disappointment, or do you want a couple of 2-0 weeks spread out here and there to give you 10 minimum would put you there?
Yeah, I think the 2-0 weeks are only good like if you're avoiding 0-2 weeks, right? Like, I don't think you want to do anything that cancels yourself out here. So avoid 0-2, wreck up a couple of 2-0s. And I get it. It sounds crazy, right? We're literally talking about breaking down an 18-game schedule into individual pods. But I think that's how you have to look. Is what we're going to call it. Yeah, I think that's how you have to look at this, though. Is if you look at it as an overall thing, and I get it, coaching's going to take this thing one game at a time, but the scout's going to be in place for the next one. And I get that from the coaching side of things. But if you look at it as a whole, it can be very not intimidating, but you can look at it and see that there's going to be a lot of teams, Jack, I think are going to get lost in the shuffle of this thing, that are going to stack up some losing streaks. Like, some good teams are going to lose 2-3 consecutive games, I think, multiple times in this league this year. It's about not going 500. I think between Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, these teams that are at the top, and I still want to see a little more of Florida in this league to validate that number 6 ranking. I know Kim Palm and everything is starting to really turn in their favor for where they are inside offensive, defensive efficiency in the top 20. But to me, it's going to be about being consistent in this league. I think this year, a 13-14 win regular season puts you in contention to win it. I just don't see anybody winning 15 games, though. I think 13-5, I think, could win you the league. And how many teams are right there in the hunt, 11-7? I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are in that 9-9 range that just kind of all of that, like right here we are, that are probably going to be able to go in that NCAA tournament and be a second weekend team. But that's where I'm thinking some of the offseason or some of the preseason, early season talk about the SEC and how good it is. When you start looking and stacking 9-9 teams in the league, or 10-8 teams in the league, or even 8-10 teams in this league, I think some of the value is going to wash away nationally, because it's going to be hard to evaluate those teams, because we attach winning to how we evaluate so much. But we don't attach that's a road game at Missouri. That's not easy. That's a road game at A&M. That's not easy. That's a home game against number 1 Tennessee when you just went on the road and played Alabama on Saturday. So, like, the way that this schedule lines up, I think being consistent, and to me consistent is don't lose 2 in a row. and then win a couple of weeks of 2-0. And I'm sure people are probably thinking, man, this is crazy. This is Kentucky basketball, but this is an SEC that we've not seen before. Like the level of play in the SEC right now, Jack, it's going to prepare you for the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be a little misleading when you look at it going into Selection Sunday. But look, going 13-5 in this league, or let's say 11-7 in this league, may be equivalent to another league only losing 2 or 3 games. I hope you're ready. Lock in, strap on, because like it's ready to go.
How important is this? So even split 9 home, 9 away in conference play. Right now, Ken Palm is projecting a 9-9 finish in the SEC, but how much more weight are you putting on those home games and just going clean slate there, and then winning 3 away from home? If you can go steal 2 to 4 of those, is that the difference?
Put the schedule up there, Steven, if you've got the graphic, because I do think protecting home court is very, very important. And, right out of the gate, you got a top 10 team, and then you're on the road for 2. But look at the 2 home games that follow. Number 13 Texas A&M and number 5 Alabama, and then you go on that sweep the Tennessee State. Going to Tennessee and playing 2 against Vandy and Tennessee. Then you come back for an emotional game against Arkansas, then back on the road. So I do think that if you can protect home court, it's going to be really hard to go undefeated at Rupp. That's just with the quality opponents that are coming in. But is it possible? Yeah, it certainly is, but it's going to be difficult. But out of those home games, if you win, let's say 80%, 75%, then you find a way to split the road or even win 4 or 5 games on the road, then I think you put yourself in a position to kind of be in a really good spot going into the league tournament. But when you look at that, look at the layout of that schedule like that. So you have that tough stretcher at the beginning, but look at the back end. You're on the road at Alabama, Oklahoma, Auburn, coming to Rupp after you've played Tennessee and Texas on the road and a Vandy team we're still kind of, looking at. Like, this is different than in any year that I've seen it. And maybe there is a team that's just going to put its cape on and kind of go through this thing, Jack, that will win 14, 15 games. But I would be shocked because everyone's schedule looks like that. It's not just Kentucky's schedule. It's Tennessee's schedule. It's Alabama's schedule. It's Auburn's schedule. Like, there are teams that are probably going to play Auburn and Kentucky and Tennessee twice when you look at it and break it down. Like, that's a pretty tough draw. But protecting home court, this is where the crowd coming into play is going to be very valuable. Every single time you step into Rupp Arena over the next couple months, it's going to be a massive game. And I think that will elevate the crowd to bring some energy. It's not the late 9 o'clock tips where a game doesn't matter, because all these league teams, I think, are going to be fighting for a chance to make the NCAA tournament. At least 12, 13, 14 of them.
So we're going to go game by game in the league and predict the schedule. But before we officially move past 24 and what we learn about this team, give me, a couple of your big picture takeaways. Who, was the biggest surprise in the non-conference that stepped up in a way that you maybe hadn't imagined? And, 1 or 2 things that you say, for Kentucky to reach its dreams and goals, for this season to go the way we hope and dream it to, this must happen that didn't happen to start the year. What would you say that is?
I think obviously you start with Otega Oweh. I think that he's been better than I thought he was coming into this. I know when this roster was first put together, Jack, you would sit here, and me and you and whoever, we would try to figure out, like, who starts, like, who is the 5 that starts the season. And, Oweh started fast in exhibition play, very good in Kentucky's key wins, can still do some more things on the floor, obviously. And this is where, being in this league, it's going to challenge you because you've got to be consistent every single night. But I think he's been a pleasant surprise. I would say even Lamont Butler is better than what I thought he was going to be. The way he impacts games, just how important he's been to this team. You could see it early, but I think his value to me and my respect for his game grew when I saw them play without him. and then just what he adds when he is on the floor. So I think those are probably some of my maybe the positive takeaways. I've been a little surprised at times, I guess, offensively at how rough it was playing through Amari at times, because with his skill set and things, I think that obviously he can get better and better as the season goes along as well. But overall, like I've been pleased with what we've seen. Jackson's had some moments where he didn't kind of match what I thought it would be in the non-conference, but then he's had his moments where he put the team kind of on his back and they beat Gonzaga on a neutral site. So finding a level of consistency and whatever that looks like to this team. Does it change in league play? Do you find a way? Because look, you've had some layoff here. You'll have a game, then you won't play for a week, or you're off for 7 or 8 days. Like that, that's hard. But it gives you practice time that is very valuable, because now that you're getting into the league, those practices now turn into you're done and you're on the road and on a flight and going out of town and playing somebody. The challenge of being consistent it's harder at this point in the season. You're playing more often. It's now definitely a Tuesday, Saturday, or a Wednesday, Saturday, or whatever the date is. That's a consistent theme now throughout the season. It's hard to find consistency there because those practices now turn to instant game prep. It's game prep, game prep, game prep, game prep. Here's a scout. You play on Tuesday. Maybe you take an off day Wednesday, back in on Thursday, on a flight on Friday. So, like, finding a level of consistency, whatever it looks like for this team. But I do think that Ortega and Lamont are probably my two that have outperformed some expectations that I had of them going into the season.
Yeah, I think if you can tell me that one of the bigs is going to step up and be a consistent threat, and again, it feels like it's hilarious that we had this exact conversation last year when we had the 3 bigs. It's like having 2 quarterbacks. So you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. We had 3 7-footers, and none of them could play. Like, it was just never knew what version of Big Z was going to come out. A, B, who the hell knows there. And then Ugo had some just brilliant moments, and then others were like, dude, get off the floor and stay off.
You just hope for one.
Amari, the highs and lows with Amari. There are times where it's like, this dude's a draft pick. Like this, there's no reason why this freak of nature should not be on draft boards. And then he goes through these other stretches where he has 1 rebound against a team whose biggest player in the rotation is 6'7". You just have these highs and lows with Amari, and Brandon Garrison at times turns into a black hole offensively, where you pass it inside and it's gone, poof, disappears forever. That shot is going up. We talked to who was it? One of the players. Lamont maybe said that once the ball goes inside to Jackson, we pretty confident that it's going to go up. Maybe it's Amari. I can't remember, but I'd love that. Like, they kind of said what all of us are thinking. Like, well, see, is like when Oscar was here. I would love to see just one of those two just kind of emerge. I don't care which one it is. I've seen brilliant play from both of them different times, probably more consistently with Amari Williams, but I think his opportunities have been bigger. So what happens with an expanded role for Brandon Garrison, we'll see. Loving the shooting touch, loving the confidence, plays with energy, plays with something that, kind of like the center version of Kirk Risa, and the way he changes the pace and kind of just brings that energy off the bench. Love that. That's priority number 1 for me. Just pick your guy and figure out who's going to be the one. And just Jackson Robinson being the guy. He talked such a massive game coming in after his stints at Texas A&M, his stints playing for Eric Musselman, kind of just no comment, not willing to talk about my time in Fayetteville, an absolute disaster. Like, he hated that experience, but every time he's talked about league play, he said, this is my time. Like, this is, so I'm hoping that it was a little bit of, what we saw in the second half against Gonzaga is going to be a consistent theme with Jackson, because I think Kentucky's going to need that consistent scoring spurt that he just hasn't been up to this point. I mean, he just goes through stretches of disappearing that will not fly in the SEC. So Ortega, I know exactly what he's going to be every time he steps out. I'm good. Ortega, if he plays the way that he is the rest of the year, I am 10 out of 10 impressed. probably maybe a draft pick, like at least in the conversation. Now I saw one of the draft guys I follow actually put out a draft profile on Otega Owe for the first time today, and I was like, that we might be having to have that conversation. He needs to keep playing the way he's doing right now, and Kentucky's going to be fine. Lamont, same thing. I have no gripes with him whatsoever. But the two I'm kind of wanting to prod a little bit and just say, all right, let's kind of pull a little bit more out of is definitely Jackson and preferably Amari Williams, because we have some more eligibility left with Brandon Garrison. But this is it. This is the last ride for Amari, one way or the other. So I'm hoping it's him, so he can kind of figure himself out and kind of drag Kentucky across the finish line through an absolute gauntlet of the SEC schedule. But those are kind of what I need to see.
And here's how you probably should look at Kentucky. They're 11-2, and they're number 10 in the country. They've outperformed what everybody thought they were going into the season. Like, they won the non-conference
by far, yes.
And I think that's you find value in that right now. Now they got to kind of outperform maybe what everybody thought of them entering league play. And look, like when we sit here and do these game by game predictions, and losses start to get into the 5 to 6 range, if that's what we end up predicting, like, don't look at it like we don't think that they can win these games. Just understand how difficult this league is. That if they go through this league, Jack, and only lose 4 games, they're a 1 seed. And maybe in contention for number 1 overall, like, depending on how, with the non-conference wins that they have, like, Kentucky's got a good foundation here of Duke and Gonzaga and not a bad loss. That's a pretty good start, like, to get into league. Now, a lot of league teams have that same thing. So this is where the league's going to kind of elevate you, or it's going to deflate you. So, like, I'm excited. I'm more excited about SEC basketball right now than I have ever been in my entire life.
Not
just because but you can't get emotional with this. With the highs and the lows, you got to be level-headed about every single result. Whether you beat a good team or you lose to a good team, you can't get caught swaying here. You've got to be in the in-between, because I'm telling you, there's going to be moments that are going to test you as a fan too, because they're going to play really well on Saturday against a really good team, and they're going to turn around Tuesday and maybe play well and lose to a really good team.
At Vandy, 34 in the net.
Bingo.
Clemson was 32 in the net. Did anybody go, oh my God, we lost to Clemson? Sky is falling. Put the for sale signs in Coach Pope's yard. No, everybody said, yeah, that's a quad one loss. It happens. It's a true road game. That was a tough one. Almost identical in the net, like almost similar resume. Like Vanderbilt's a really good team, but like you said to start the show, like, Vanderbilt has been seen as the whipping boy of the SEC for years. So don't also, on the flip side, like, if we project a couple more losses here and there against the good teams, don't freak out if that doesn't happen. But on the flip side, like, if we predict a win against going on the road to beat Vandy and we lose that game, it's not a sign necessarily of, oh, now it's time to panic. There's just going to be kind of this is a really, really tough league to project, because you could see them go and, beat Mississippi State on the road, but you could also see them lose by 10. Like, it's just, it's a really weird, tough, awesome schedule. Like Mark Pope said it best, like, I feel sad for you if you don't get to experience this. Like, this is the peak of college basketball, the peak of the SEC. We've never seen a league like this ever. Enjoy kind of the... usually we'd get a Tuesday night at 9:00 against a quad 3 road team. The closest that we'll have is that South Carolina game at home on February 8th, right after the Arkansas and Ole Miss. Like, that's the only quad 3 left on the schedule. Just kind of
out of 18 league games, only 4 of them are non-quad 1s.
Yeah, 14 of 18.
That's it. 14 of 18 are quad 1 games. So, like, when I look at the schedule, there are games, and Arkansas just so happens to be one of those that are quad 2. And we just know that the moment and the atmosphere is going to elevate that's quad 1 category, because you're going to get Arkansas's best shot. But just looking at that,
and like this take, Anthony, I know he's been kind of a troll in the comments. The old Big East who's better. Factually not. Like, that's objectively incorrect. If
the Big East was a lot of fun.
if the SEC gets 13 teams in the league, it beats that old Big East record by two teams. Like,
well, the Big East,
that
the
only
Big
got
East
11
tournament,
only, but
the Big East tournament was what was just so epic about that league, right? Is they would beat up on each other, and then they'd go into that tournament, and you would see high level physical basketball. Like, that league was physical. This one, we've not seen this version yet. The treat's going to be when you get to Nashville, and it's everybody, and and then you're going to have fan bases that are probably more invested in basketball, maybe so than what they are at times, because the league is going to be just so much fun this year that I think a lot of people, like Kentucky fans, obviously is going to dominate Nashville, but you're going to have other fan bases that are going to make its way there too to support. And I think you're just going to have quad one matchup after quad one matchup in the SEC tournament, that even the opening night of the tournament has a team in it that could possibly be on the bubble that's trying to play its way into the NCAA tournament. Think about that. Like, that
Wednesdays in the past used to be like,
yeah,
hey, this is when we just go get drunk and just eat a bunch and just be, you just sit in the stands and just mindlessly, that's when you catch up with old media friends that you haven't seen in forever. Like, you don't do anything those Wednesday nights.
Or you get there on Thursday.
Yeah.
Or you
Most
get
people,
there,
a lot of people just didn't even show up.
And the Thursday games are going to be full of teams that are going to be NCAA tournament teams.
Like, the whole day. I mean, the
listen,
whole
Joe,
schedule.
And that's where I'm coming from, that they've done so much in the non-conference that I think a lot of teams have put themselves in position to be in the field. But I'm also willing to bet that Lunardi's last four in, first four out, it may look like the end or the back end or middle of the pack of the SEC standings. Like, it may just literally look like SEC team, SEC team, SEC team. That all then depends on Nashville. And I get it. Like, it's only January 2nd. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm telling you, I don't see this league dropping the ball. Like, I see this league holding up throughout the season. You're going to have your teams that are going to have its moments of maybe a 2 or 3 game skid that I think is a good basketball team. And if you're Kentucky, you got to avoid those.
All right. Let's knock this out, and then we're going to go through our schedule. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations, special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You get to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue and Circa Sports Kentucky as well. We're so thrilled to be partnered with them. The best time of the year is here. More so than ever with SEC play beginning, in the best app to bet college basketball and SEC basketball is Circa Sports Kentucky. It's sports betting the way it should be, with high and transparent betting limits, the lowest holds, and exceptional customer service. It doesn't matter when they take the court, whether it's spreads, props, futures, or in-game. Circa Sports is the place to bet college basketball, fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 18 or older for Kentucky Gambling Problem Services. Call or text 1-800-426-2537. All right. The moment you've been waiting for is here, Shawn, and it begins Saturday. It's going to be sleepy, 11 a.m. They're practicing early specifically to kind of get their, just get the early mojo right, the vibe, get the game day vibe. They did that early this morning, practice early to just kind of get the, what it's going to feel like on game day here in the next couple days. They did that against Brown as well, knowing the 2 o'clock Tuesday tip-off. So Todd Golden, undefeated, 13-0, best start that they've had since the 06 championship run under Billy Donovan. How do you expect that one to go? Florida schedule's rough, have not beaten essentially anybody of substance. UNC, that was kind of a nail biter that they had to kind of put that one together and win that one close late. But analytically incredible and continuing to beat every test that they've had. How are you expecting that one to go on Saturday?
I think Rupp Arena matters here. And I think that it being at home, I think Kentucky also has a veteran-led team that understands, how important it is to get off to a good start. in this league. And I think Mark Pope feels the same way. Obviously, the way that they played against Ohio State, Brown's not able to. That's not the game where you really feel good about yourself even after you win it. But this one can be, and I trust that in a matchup against a top-ranked opponent, in the top 10 opponent, I've seen Kentucky in those moments this year perform and find a way to win. I think they do the same thing here.
Todd Golden said tonight, actually, or earlier today, that his team hasn't experienced adversity yet. He knows it's coming, and kind of had that like, I hope it's not going to be in Lexington, but it might be. So like, I think there's kind of an understanding there that Florida hasn't played a team as talented and as skilled as Kentucky, as well coached as Kentucky. So the opening line came out today, 1.5. That's a home court advantage, but I also think that the Kentucky's just better. Florida's backcourt is absolutely tremendous, but I just think Kentucky has more pieces. The depth is there. I'm going Kentucky in that one to get that first statement win. Pope has done a really good job of nailing these statement games, and I do think winning the first in the SEC matters. And I think the fan base is going to be as energetic as ever, even at 11 a.m. So. We're going to go with a 1-0 start in the SEC, immediately followed by a trip to Athens to take on the 27 in the net Georgia right now. So the receiving votes in the polls. How do you expect that one to go in Athens?
I think Kentucky wins that one on the road too. So here's that pod that we've been talking about of 2 games. And Kentucky, in my opinion, is able to get out to a 2-0 start in the league. And I think that is very valuable to get off to a hot start.
I think so too. I think they're going to go to Athens. I think they're going to get a win in that one. Georgia's a really talented group, outperforming expectations. Mike White's done a really, really good job over there. I just think, again, talent's going to win out in that one, and I think they're going to go to Stegman Coliseum and they're going to win that one. And I think following that one, going to Starkville, we'll be there. Steve and I are going to head down there. Mississippi State's tough. Mississippi State is really, really good. Chris Jans is a hell of a coach. I think that's where Kentucky's going to get its first SEC loss. They're going to go to Humphrey Coliseum and lose that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's one. When is the last time Kentucky's lost at Mississippi State?
I don't think Cal ever lost there.
He did not. The only loss he ever had to him was in the SEC tournament. So I had gone back and forth on this one. I can't remember where I went in the preseason, but I think I had them losing this one and then beating Ole Miss because I didn't have them losing to both Mississippi schools. But this is a tough one to me, and I think that this is where the league gets you. Is I think you've played 2 really tough games and you don't get any relief, and I think that's a place that's going to be packed. They haven't beaten Kentucky in a regular season game in a long, long time, especially down there in that building. So I would expect that one's a tough one. And we've seen Kentucky narrowly escape with victories down there over the years, but this is a good Mississippi State team.
And I think you're going to get kind of a similar script, physical, well-coached team. Buzz Williams coming to Rupp Arena immediately afterwards, similar in the net, 20 in the net with Texas A&M. I think they're going to respond, kind of learn from some of those mistakes that we saw down in Starkville and make up for them with a win against Texas A&M on January 14th.
I think they beat Texas A&M too. Like I think that being in Rupp this year matters a ton. And this is where the fan base is going to come into play, Jack. Every single environment in that building has to be juiced because it can make a difference when it comes to a schedule like this. Because I think this team will feed off that crowd. Outside of Louisville, they've not really got the big pop crowd of Rupp Arena yet when it comes to those key games. I think that's going to be something that this team feels on Saturday that they're like, wow, this is what league plays like in this building. I think BBN can make a significant impact this year.
And I think that's going to trend in the same direction with Alabama coming to town. I think Alabama, the style of play really favors, evenly matched. It's not like one of those contrasting styles that, the physicality gets them. And, Alabama's excellent this year. I mean, unbelievable, obviously well coached as ever, coming off a Final Four team. But I think there are some holes there, and I do think that those holes Mark Pope will be able to kind of expose, and it's going to be a brilliant X's and O battle between Nate Oates and Mark Pope. I can't wait for that one, but I do think that one in particular is going to, I'm not going to say the same thing down in Tuscaloosa later in the season, but I do think that Rupp Arena is going to win out on that one, and I think they're going to go at 2-0 in that little pod, if you will.
Me and you have not talked about this, but I've got that was one I had on, I believe, losing in the preseason. But like I said, I've seen Kentucky when it comes down to playing elite opponents, and I've seen Mark Pope make a difference. And I think that this is a game where BBN making its impact, a huge game at Rupp Arena. I think Mark Pope on the sidelines too. I think that this is another one that Kentucky wins, and I think they get off to a 4-1 start in SEC play, which is really, really ideal. But it's going to be difficult, but I think that they get off to a great start.
This is going to be one of the few Saturday to Saturday. There will not be a Tuesday game in that week period. So I think this one's a weird one. For some reason, this game just keeps popping up in my mind. I think they're going to win it down at Vandy in Nashville, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be one of those that Kentucky gets off to a hot start, maybe gets behind at half and has to kind of claw its way back. I think, I like Byington, the new coach at Vandy. I think that he's a really brilliant guy who's just kind of building his own culture there, and it's weird. And it's weird to say that Vanderbilt basketball has a culture, but I think he's doing a really good job of establishing one. Not this year, I don't think, but I think it's going to get there eventually under him. I do like him a lot. I think that it's, again, talent is just going to win out ever so slightly in that one. But I think that one's going to be a one that kind of wakes us up a little bit, that maybe closer than fans expect because of what we all know about that Vanderbilt matchup is usually the one that we kind of take big time advantage of.
Yeah, and this is where Vandy's schedule, I think, can really get them, because prior to that game, they have Tennessee at home, and then they're at Alabama. Those are two tough games before you get Kentucky, and then you go on the road to Oklahoma and Florida. That's a tough stretch for Vandy. So could be playing a desperate team in that sense, in that building. It's a weird vibe if you've never played there before. And I mean, that's the case for a lot of Kentucky's teams over the years. Is most guys, it was their first time there and stuff. But I think that Mark Pope's familiarity with the building as a player, Mark Pope's familiarity with the building and being aware, I think that he's going to be able to translate that to his team well. And I think Kentucky gets another win. And I think that they're out to a 5-1 start in the league, which is pretty elite if that's what happens.
And I think they will eat a little bit of slice of humble pie immediately following, going to Knoxville right after that. I think Tennessee is just a really, really good team. That's going to be a tough out for any team in college basketball. They're going to be a really tough out in the postseason. And I just don't know if this group is going to have it, and especially coming up with the emotional game coming up to follow with Arkansas coming to town. I just think that's going to be one that they really, really have a hard time winning. So I'm giving the Cats a loss down in Knoxville.
Yeah, I've got a loss in Knoxville as well. So that would be 5-2 for me through the first 7 games in the league. It's still a really good start, but you got a very important game coming up after Tennessee.
And I think they win that one, and I think it's going to be one of those deals that I think Cal's going to be mentally prepared. I think Arkansas, I don't think the world of them. I think it's a bad version of some of the Kentucky teams we've seen. I think if we had seen this version of Kentucky, I think all Kentucky fans would be really disappointed if that's the roster that they rolled out. And you see that starting lineup, and it is what we likely would have seen starting in Lexington. So just a weird year for this, but I just think there's way too much emotional investment, and I just don't think Cal's gonna, have it to kind of push Arkansas across the finish line. And I know that Kentucky's gonna be invested to win this one. BBN's gonna be invested to win this one. I just do not see Kentucky losing that game. So I'm going a statement, yet another statement victory, and the one that we all kind of have in the back of our mind is one that Pope has to win. I think he's going to do a really, really good job of making that happen.
Yep, I think so too. I feel the exact same way. I just don't see, as juice as that building's been at times, I think that this one is probably going to set some records when it comes to how loud that building can get. And I think that Kentucky, the team will feel the energy. I think Mark Pope will feel the energy. It's going to be a weird feeling seeing Cal on the other sideline, but I just think that BN's going to do what it can to kind of push Kentucky across the finish line.
And here's the difference. The players here especially have no nerves whatsoever about that one. They have no emotional investment in that game from an anxiety standpoint, from a, oh my gosh, this was my former team or this is my former coach. I gotta perform well for them. They have none of that. Whereas you get an Adu, you get a Big Z, you get obviously that entire bench is just loaded with guys that are going to be feeling the pressure of that. And I think the looseness of it, I think is going to really kind of separate Kentucky in that one. Weird one. Ole Miss has kind of been a weird team this year. They've, looked really, really good at times, and they've really stunk it up at times. I think, again, kind of the emotional investment after the Arkansas one, I think it's going to lead to a sloppy one down in Oxford. Another Tuesday midweek game. I think they go down to Oxford and lose that one, Shawn.
I've actually got them winning this one because I couldn't have them losing to both Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So I've got Kentucky, winning again. So I've got 2 losses in the first half of the league, but I've obviously got some coming here in the back half. But I think Kentucky has enough to go down there. I could see the challenge of a letdown coming off of a game versus Arkansas, but I think that Mark Pope will do an excellent job. And I just think Kentucky's veteran leadership and how old they are, I think will play out when it comes to league play about staying the course and staying on top of what they're doing.
Then the one quad 3 game left on the schedule, South Carolina comes to town. This is going to the only one that you can see as all right, that's a bad loss. This is the only bad loss potential left on the schedule. I don't envisioning that happening. I think Kentucky takes care of business against Lamont Paris coming to town.
I think so too. Obviously, it scares me just because it's such an outlier, I think, compared to the other games in the league. But I trust Kentucky at Rupp to get this one. I know this is one that's really got Kentucky over the year. Yeah,
more.
That one on the road would freak me out a lot more. But I do know that this program in recent years has not been good against them. But this is a different program. Obviously, I think that this is a different mindset, and I think Kentucky will find a way to win that one.
Tennessee coming to town from there. I actually, after taking a loss in Knoxville, I have Kentucky winning that one. I think that atmosphere is going to be up there. I mean, to have 3 atmospheres, or 4 with 5, Florida coming to town, Alabama coming to town, Arkansas coming to town, Tennessee, and then Auburn later on in the year. I mean, that's just an all-time home slate there. But this is going to be another big one. Just kind of the weirdness that was Rick Barnes versus John Calipari. Some just huge outliers in that series. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how Mark Pope sets the tone with that one. But I do think that Kentucky takes care of business at Rupp Arena.
Yeah, and I actually have them losing this one. I have them losing to Tennessee. I have them losing both the regular season.
A Tennessee sweep.
Yeah, I have them losing both regular season games to Tennessee. And I think this is a very good Tennessee team. I think that when you're Rick Barnes and you're getting at this stage of his career, I think that this is probably one of his last attempts to kind of get a team to a Final Four and another deep NCAA tournament run. And I think that this team has an excellent chance and opportunity to do that. They defend at a high level. They've got playmakers that can score the ball. They got a veteran point guard. They have a lot to like, and I just think that that's a tough matchup for Kentucky, home or away. Now, if that game is played in Nashville a month or so later, I think it's hard to beat Kentucky 3 times. But regular season wise, I think that they get them twice.
Then they Valentine's Day weekend go to Austin to take on Texas number 35, talented freshman Trey Johnson, a guy that Kentucky really wanted. Coaching is very much up in the air. Depends on what day you get them. Interesting aspect, Valentine's Day weekend. Didn't expect Love to make an impact on Kentucky's effort up in New York City, but with 35 of those guys getting engaged while they were in the Big Apple, that clearly was a distraction that made an impact. So I'm not sure how Valentine's weekend plays into that one, but I do think that when push comes to shove, they're going to be able to go to Austin and win that one. Although I think that one's going to be a rowdy environment. I think that's going to be kind of a statement game for Texas, that fan base, kind of the welcome to the SEC, getting the big time blue blood school in town for the first time. I think that's going to be a really fun one. But I think Kentucky leaves there with a victory.
Yeah, this one I've gone back and forth on. Since I have them losing at Rupp, I think they're able to bounce back on the road and get.
That would be a pod loss if you picked a loss. There would be a pod loss.
Yeah, which I've got a stretch coming up here, but I feel like that they're able to bounce back and get that win. And to this point, they've avoided those pods that I've talked about. And if that's the way that this thing plays out, I mean, you're talking what 3, 4, 5, 6 lost SEC team. And then I think you're right there where you want to be. But I've got some that maybe surprise some people here coming down the pike.
I hope that Vanderbilt won't be that surprise. I'm picking a win, especially at home against that team. If they're able to sneak away with one down in Nashville, there's no reason for them to lose that one. So I think that's going to be a comfortable win, quad 2 for a reason on February 19th.
Yeah, I think that this is a good game. Coming off that stretch of Tennessee, Texas, and then sandwiched between what I think is possibly the most difficult stretch of league play coming up here. So I got them beating Vandy at Rupp Arena before they go on the road to Tuscaloosa.
I have a loss in Tuscaloosa. Like I said, I think that they're going to steal that one at home, and I think that environment, that just kind of setup and the revenge factor, I think that's going to be definitely at play again. I love this Alabama team. I think they're really, really talented. I expect Kentucky to go down there and lose that one, and it could be one of those of the year where we look back and go, ooh, that one got a little out of hand.
Yeah, I think that they lose at Alabama as well. I think Alabama has a lot. I think that building brings a lot as well, and I think that this is one of the games where I just think that Kentucky struggles, and I think Alabama just controls it from beginning to end.
This Oklahoma one is very, very interesting to me, Sean. February 26th, it's a Wednesday. Oklahoma, I mean, for my money, maybe the surprise of college basketball. Would you agree? Picked second to last in the SEC, and then they're now, top 15 nationally, number 12, as playing as well as anybody. The schedule's weird. They're not really, the net doesn't love them. They're 43 in the net. That Jeremiah Fears is one of the best players in college basketball right now. It's a guy that Kentucky could have had if they wanted him, just kind of passed on him when he decided to reclass up from the 2025 class. So really weird Oklahoma team that man,
I've got a loss here.
I think they're gonna. Man, that's gonna be a tough one. I think they lose that one.
This is my pod. This is my pod. Actually, this is I actually have them losing 3 straight. I have them losing on the road at Alabama, on the road at Oklahoma. That's just a weird game sandwiched between 2. And then I really think that this Auburn team is very, very good. I think it'll be a competitive game at Rupp. But I just don't see this team. I don't see anybody going undefeated at home in league play. I've already got the loss to Tennessee at Rupp. But I think that this is another one that Kentucky loses. And I actually think they have a 3-game losing streak here at the back end of league play. This league's going to get you at some point, Jack. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to get all these teams, whether it be Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and Auburn. It's going to get you at some point. And I think that running the gauntlet, you're getting into that late February, early March window to where your legs and things, and I think that it just gets you mentally at this point.
I think the same thing. I think Auburn's the best team in college basketball. I think Auburn is as good as it gets on both ends. I think they are an absolute juggernaut in a schedule of juggernauts. They are the top dog, the ultimate juggernaut. Rupp changes it. I think it's going to be an unbelievable environment, but they just got the horses. They just have the this year just kind of has that it's Auburn's year kind of vibe to it. And until I see a team that's better, I'm not going to pick against them. I'm just really not. I think that they're going to be as good as it gets in the conference. They'll have some slip ups, but man, I think they're going to steamroll through the rest of the year, and I think they're going to be a Final Four team. So I do think I agree with you. I think they're going to lose that one, and then we don't really have to dig into the nuts and bolts of both unless you have any surprises there. But I think they're going to go 2-0 in that last little pod. LSU at home and then at Missouri.
I actually have them losing at Missouri to close the regular season, and I just think that it's one of those things that you've gone through the gauntlet, you've gone through the league. It's a very difficult league, and I think I've seen some bad performances on the road in that final game of the regular season. I know, they beat Arkansas a few years ago. That was a good win, but I've seen when that last game's been Florida a few times, I've seen some bad performances. But I just think that the legs get you at this point when you're talking the league. And then you regroup yourself and you go into the SEC tournament rejuvenated. That I just think that they close SEC play with a rough stretch, losing 4 or 5. But I feel like they've done enough in the first half that they put themselves in a good position. And I could be wrong. Like maybe it's not Missouri. Maybe it's one of those early in the season that I picked as a win, or it's on the road at Texas or something like that. But I just feel like that this is a team that's going to be in that 11-7, 10-8 range in the league when it's all said and done, which I still think is a very good basketball team.
So I officially predict a 12-6 finish in the SEC. I would be thrilled. Like if you were to sell me right now a 12-6 finish in the SEC with the wins that they would get, the quad ones that they would be able to rack up, and finishing the year with 8 losses overall going into the postseason, I am taking that all day, every day. And as Steven did his little calculation with Bart Torvik, it's a 2 seed. So I'm really, really liking that resume for Kentucky, and I think that really bodes well for them going into the postseason. Again, I've predicted from the beginning I think they're going to go to the SEC tournament and win the whole thing. So I think a lot of those other conversations that we talked about Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, the strength of this league, I think that they're just going to get that Nashville mojo and go win the whole thing down there before really, really seeing what the heck happens in March. I think that's going to be a really, really fascinating time. But I think if you get a 2 seed going into postseason play, win the SEC tournament, then I think fans are on cloud 9.
I mean, think about it. So mine would be 22-9 entering the league tournament, and that's a 3 seed. I mean, a non-loss team, but even the losses that I predicted, like none of them were outside of a quad 1. Mm-hmm. So they're not, even if you lose, but that's where I'm talking about those pods, that if you have a 3-game losing, and obviously losing 4 or 5 to end the year in league play would be difficult to kind of stomach, but you just can't have those periods build up. You can't have 2 runs of 4 or 5, or even losing 3 or 5 down the stretch, depending on who it is. There's going to be some good teams that lose 3 out of 5 games in this league that are going to be able to go in the SEC tournament, win, and get to that final couple of days, and then also make some noise in the NCAA tournament. I just think it's a deep league. I think it's going to test your will every single game. But if Kentucky's able to get double-digit wins in this league this year, I think there's significant value in it. Well, if they get to your mark, they get the 12 wins, you really like what they're doing because of the non-conference wins that they got.
I really do think that anything above 10 wins in the SEC is gravy. Like I feel pretty good about that 12-win mark that I picked. Assuming you get Kirk Carissa back in somewhat of a timely manner. Pope was pretty on this a little bit. On his call-in radio show Monday night, said, I don't know when or if Kerr is going to come back. That if really kind of threw me a curveball, and then was asked about it today and said, it'd be a game time decision on Saturday if it were my call. Trying to make light of what's clearly a pretty, tough situation for him. And then just kind of left it pretty vague. He was, talked pretty comfortably with the numbers to start with when the injury first happened. Said, where Vegas would put it at 6 weeks, but check back with me in 10 days because that's Kirk Carissa. Gave us at least numbers to work with kind of that 6 week being reading between the coach speak lines clearly what he had in his mind, and then kind of going away from the numbers and just saying kind of like, hey, it's a really serious injury and surgery. We'll see what happens. So I think that situation's pretty underrated about what Kentucky can be in some of these, weird losses because weird matchups in SEC play because of just the spark that he provides. And that's why I do think that it really was massive for Travis Perry to play those 14 minutes, play as well as he did, finally get a shot to fall because he's going to have to get reps. He's going to have to get some type of run in the SEC, and the gap could kind of widen or shrink with how well Travis Perry comes off the bench and plays. And if you do need Jackson to step up, if Travis can't be that guy, that's just that backup point guard role is going to be a really tricky thing for Kentucky. So I would just feel a whole heck of a lot better if Kirk Kriisa comes back. Initial timeline was, mid to late January. If you can tell me that he'll be back by first or second week of February, I'd be thrilled, and just get us into that back end as we're talking about with some of these late losses. I want to see him in those games.
Yeah, that veteran depth matters, and I think that just getting him back and being able to work him back in before we get into postseason play would be a big deal. And obviously avoid, and this is a lot. I mean, you don't know, you can't control this, but you'd love to be able to avoid any injuries that hold guys out for multiple games.
Mm-hmm.
Other than an illness here or there, maybe a rolled ankle, something like that. But just avoid, stay healthy, win the games at home, protect your home court, compete on the road, and then let's see where you are when the dust settles there the first week of March and you go to Nashville. I mean, here we are starting league play. It'll be SEC tournament before we know it. But starting on Saturday, that's a massive opportunity out of the gate against a really good opponent that I probably would say still feels like it's trying to prove itself, even though it's number 6 in the country. I'm sure there are a lot of people outside of the North Carolina win that are still looking at Florida thinking, are they for real? Are they a top 10 team? Well, you come to Rupp Arena this year and beat Kentucky, and I think that there's a lot to be validated in that. So Kentucky's got a challenge right out of the gates.
One win in the Ken Pom top 50 for Florida, and that's the North Carolina one.
And you question that win a little bit, right? Like, you have to. Like, North Carolina just dropped one, to Louisville. So, I mean, when you look at it, this still feels like Kentucky to me has to start SEC play with a chip on its shoulder. It can't be Florida coming to Rupp with a chip. If you're Kentucky, you gotta find that chip on your shoulder. And it's, to me, be consistent in league play. Avoid those 0-2 weeks. I had an 0-3 stretch in there. Can Kentucky avoid that? Yeah, they can. They can beat Oklahoma on the road. Can they beat Tennessee 1-2? Yeah, they could. I just see a lot of value in Tennessee that I think there are difficult matchups. And but we'll see what happens. I mean, that's the beauty of it, is you got to back it up on the floor. If they outperform 11-7 and 12-6, pretty good team.
Life would be very, very good for us in March.
If they're off a game and it's 10-8 for me, or it's 11-7 for you, then it's still in a pretty good spot, because that'd be like 9-10 more quad 1 wins. So then you're talking double-digit quad 1 wins on the season. That's a pretty good resume. You're going to build your own resume as long as you don't lose every game in the league. You're never going to be out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's wrap up here then and call our shot with Florida. Pick a score. We know we're both picking a win, but pick a score in game MVP.
I'll go Kentucky 85, Florida 78. I'll go Jackson Robinson as my MVP.
I will go Kentucky 87, Florida 81. And I'm going. We'll just call it the guy about 2 guys that we talked about needing to see more of in the new year. You're going Jackson. I'll go Amari Williams. All the talk about the guards in this matchup, 2 really, really, really impressive backcourts. Let's have the guy that we're kind of calling upon to step up a little bit in Amari Williams to show himself to start SEC play. He had some good quotes about how excited he was, and like, this is why you signed with Kentucky. This is why you kind of come to a place like this for your last year of eligibility. So hopefully he's ready, and I think it's going to go a very long way for the Cats in a win in Rupp Arena here on Saturday morning. It's going to be an absolute blast. Shawn, this was an absolute blast. We went through the whole schedule. I think I feel a lot better about the SEC after talking through it and kind of going game by game and the situations and what's going to lead into it, and the emotions and pressure and all that. So I feel a lot better after our little kind of group therapy vent session, kind of ringing in the new year with a good little dose of optimism. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever done this at this point in the season where we went through and went league game by game in the league. I know we do preseason, but I don't remember.
We did the preseason, and was that the first time we've done preseason?
I think
picks?
It was. By the way, these are terrible.
Was it bad?
God,
well, you spilled half of it on you.
Yeah, true. That's true.
It set the tone to start a bad drinking experience.
Cake batter donut. I don't recommend it. 10-16, but.
Unless you want to advertise with us, Dunkin' Donuts. If you want to advertise, I will say it's the greatest drink of all time. I'd love to experience that. Although I'm a black coffee guy, so if you hand me the cake batter, Tutti Frutti, Wild and Rudy, I'm just not gonna be for it. So you can send those to Shawn. I'll just get the cold brew black.
It's 11 fluid ounces, and I'm wearing 3 of them, so I probably only got about 8 ounces of this. So. Got to put this. I'm wearing white too, so
don't stand up. All right, let's get the heck out of here, Shawn. This was fun. Where can fans find your work?
Right at _Coach S Smith, right there.
You can find me at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Bunch of fun stuff. Recruiting starting to pick up. Starting to get some whispers. Michael Brown commits to Louisville. Big time get for Pat Kelsey. We'll see if we get a little, response here from Mark Pope with a little Caleb Wilson action. This is, we're go time. January is commitment month for Caleb Wilson. We'll see what happens there. I'm still picking the Cats, but it'll be a fun month. We're excited to start SEC play. I know the Cats are as well. We will see you bright and early, 11 a.m., Rupp Arena on Saturday. It's go time, SEC play. Let's go.